Hi, welcome to My Good Content with your host, Byron LaBare. Today, I'm excited to have on the show Sinclair Johnson. In 2019, Sinclair, while running for Oklahoma State, was an NCAA champion in the 1500 meters. Soon after, Sinclair signed on with Nike. And in 2022, Sinclair was a U.S. national champion in the 1500 meters. In 2022 and 2023, Sinclair represented the United States of America at the World Championships. Most recently, at the Olympic trials in 2024, Sinclair ran the seventh fastest time by an American woman in the 1500 meters in a time of 3 minutes, 56.75. So today, I bring to you Sinclair Johnson. Sinclair, welcome to the show. Great to have you. And I'd love to just jump right in and see where it all began. How did running start for you?
Thank you. I'm excited to be here today. Yeah, I got into running basically how I feel like a lot of distance runners get into running. They play other sports, and I was a lacrosse player back in my middle school days and growing up in Florida. And I tried out for the cross country team my freshman year of high school. Honestly, just to stay in shape for the lacrosse season, which is normally in the spring. Yeah, long story short, I basically realized that I was good at running. And then after my freshman cross-country season, I decided to go out for track and field and never went out for the lacrosse team and just continued to, I guess, run from there.
It's interesting you say that because there's so many people that I've been speaking with lately, and even going back 20, 30 years when I ran, a lot of people started with soccer and then lacrosse, and people have changed over from soccer or lacrosse to running.
Yeah, soccer and lacrosse, very, very similar sports. Obviously, one, the ball's on the ground, one, the ball's in the air, but yeah, very similar.
Good one. So starting in high school then, did you prefer one over the other, like cross country or track? Was there one that you favored?
I definitely preferred track over cross country. I wasn't a huge fan of cross country. I wasn't a huge fan of running long distances. And so then when I got to track and I could run the 800, which was, just 2 laps around the track, I feel like then I started to really find a true love for running and competing and racing.
So 800, great event. In my opinion, it's one of my favorite events. A little partial to the 800, but the mile's awesome too. So in high school, was the 800 your primary event?
I would say so. Yeah, that was definitely the event that I was best at in high school. I did the 1600 as well, but I was just such low mileage in high school that I was just better suited for the 800. So yeah, I did run the 1600 at state as well, but yeah, the 800 was definitely my first love and why I really started to like running.
I'm sure you were approached by a lot of teams in high school, but how did you end up at Oklahoma State?
Honestly, just through the recruiting process, the head coach, Dave Smith, who is still there now, just reached out to me. And honestly, I knew nothing about Oklahoma State. But one thing I did know going through the recruiting process was that I didn't want to stay in Florida, and I really wanted to explore colleges outside of the state. So when they approached me, I know the rules are so different now, but I think it was July 1st going into my senior year, that is when they could first talk to you. And so I remember him being the first one to reach out to me then. He was like the first one to come to my house for a home visit when they were allowed to do that. It was my first official visit that I went on going through the process, and especially when I went on my official visit, it just made sense that this was a place where I felt like I was going to be successful, and I felt like I was going to have, the coaching set up, the team set up, the athletic department, the community that is there in Stillwater, like all behind me. And yeah, that was definitely true through my 4 years there. It was definitely not initially on my radar, but ended up going to Stillwater, Oklahoma, which is a place that I'm sure if you think of a small town in Oklahoma, you're thinking of Stillwater, Oklahoma. But it's honestly ideal for distance running, and I loved it so much.
It's a phenomenal school. So while you were there, what did you find is the biggest difference, especially coming from Florida, being hot and everything? Oklahoma has its different weather, but the acclimation for you from going from Florida, running, the 800, and also participating in cross country, what was it like going to Oklahoma State for you? Division I, how was that transition?
Yeah, I feel like the first year was tough, and I think mainly it was tough because I was 1,000 miles away from my home and from where all I've ever known was my hometown of Longwood, Florida. I wasn't under my parents' roof anymore, and so I think I definitely struggled with my first year of just figuring out how to balance kind of being an adult, being on your own at least. And yeah, and then also just coming into a training program that, like, I in high school probably was severely undertrained, and going into a program where now, the expectation is we're going to run 60 miles a week, and we're going to do 10 times 1K on a cross-country course, and you're going to finish the workout and doing tempo runs. And I mean, just a lot of new stimuli of not only training, but then also just general life, and figuring out how to manage my time with school and social and running. Yeah, it was a tough transition. I think my freshman year, I had my first significant bone injury, and that was also, really challenging to deal with because I'd never really had an injury before that took me out for as long as that one did. But I think the one thing that I can really really remember about my first year is how much fun I was having regardless of all the challenges I was going through. I just was surrounded by such good people, and I think that's been something that I've kind of had throughout my entire life, and I feel very fortunate for that. And yeah, it just makes those really tough times a lot easier. It's just kind of cool to look back and seeing that, my 17-year-old self made a decision to go to this school based solely off of the community and what I thought it could be, and to actually have that community and that support my first year, I think, was super, super helpful in developing me as an athlete and the person I am today.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, that's a good reason for, listening to your intuition of, going somewhere that you felt like it was a comfortable place.
100%. Yeah. And I think we're going to have our injuries, we're going to have our struggles, especially as a collegiate athlete. Maybe I didn't look at this exactly going in, but I guess I was trying to find a place where I felt like I was going to be still happy and enjoy myself, regardless of whether, I was running well or running at all.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So the injury you had with the bone, what was that exactly?
I had a tibial stress reaction. And I don't remember, I think it was my right tibia at that point.
I know that's a hard thing. You're at college, the comfort that you felt, which I know what that's like because that's what it was like for me in college. So that helped. But then, you fast forward to your junior year in 2019 that you win a national championship. So I commend you, first of all, for battling an injury in your freshman year. You're away from home and at college to turn it around. And then 2 years later, win a national championship. What do you contribute that to?
Yeah, I think I've always just had very big internal belief in myself. And I don't think, anything worth or anything that comes with, great success or great accomplishment comes easy. And so I think I've always just tried to see the bigger picture. And, that's not always true. I think there were probably a lot of times where I was really defeated and I was really upset and frustrated. If I do let myself feel that way, the next day I'm trying to, see the bigger picture and see that, this is just a little bump in the road. And I feel like every single injury I've had to this point in my career, I've always come back stronger. And so I think really just holding on to that during a time of hardship, knowing that, an unfortunate setback, but a setback to make the comeback even sweeter and to come back even stronger. And I think, you learn things about your body and how much you can handle each time. And I learned things my freshman year. I learned things my sophomore year when I got injured. I'm still learning things to this day. So after my freshman year, trying to really learn and dial in what exactly is going to be the best training.
Yeah, that's always a hard thing. At my age of 50, and I'm still running 30-something years later, and I battle injuries every time I come back to start running. And I'm like, all right, back to ground zero. And that's hard, but it's commendable that you had that injury. Then you win a national championship. So after your national championship, then Nike comes. I'd love to hear how that felt, because to me, that's surreal. Nike's one of the biggest branded names out there. And they come after you win your national championship your junior year. If you can walk through that, what that was like.
Yeah, it was, honestly, as cliche as it sounds, it was life-changing. Definitely did not think that signing a professional contract at 21 after my junior year was was possible. But given that year, the success that I had, and I guess how fast I ran, and to place fourth later that summer at the U.S. Championships, I think it just became really evident that this was going to be the next step for me. Like I'm here. I'm now on not only the collegiate stage, but I'm now on the national stage. And yeah, at first it was like I ran a 4-minute 5-second race at NCAA's, and then that little amount of time was just like the catapult to Nike wanting to sign me, which is crazy to think about. That 4 minutes can really change like the course of the next 5 years for me. So yeah, it was very surreal. I felt overwhelmed and just unsure of like, am I ready to take this big step? Am I not? But I think as took the summer to really talk to other athletes and get their opinions, and other people that been in my situation, and then just really kind of hone in on what I wanted to do and where I saw myself. I think by the end of the summer it became evident that this was something that I wanted to do and forego the rest of my eligibility and sign a professional contract.
I've been out to the Michael Johnson track. In 2014, I went out to run in the Prefontaine Classic, the 10K they have. And I was on my way through the I think it's like a 1.5 mile little loop outside the track. I think a little path, and I was running, and Shalane Flanagan was in front of me. And I was fortunate enough to meet her, and I ran I did a little workout on the track and stuff. That's the next thing I want to ask you. What's it like training there? I was there once, and I ran like some mile repeats, and it was just, the running with trees in the middle of the track and everything. What's that like training there every day for you?
Yeah, I mean, initially when I first moved out here, it was very exciting. I think it's just a very iconic track, and to be on Nike World headquarters where there's just so much history, especially distance running. All the way back to, the very first athletes that Phil Knight signed. It was a very surreal feeling. I think being out there, I'm following in the footsteps of all these other incredible athletes that I've looked up to for a really long time. And I don't think that feeling will ever really go away. I think every time I walk up to that track, it just feels magical, and it just feels like a really special place, and a lot of history, and a lot of miles have been run by some really, really good athletes, American record holders and world record holders and Olympic champions. Yeah, it's a really cool track to be able to train every single day.
That's awesome. So what does like a typical training week look like for you? I know you've battled injuries, so I'd be interested to know what are some of the disciplines that you have in recovery?
Yeah, I've kind of mixed around with a bunch of different modalities. I think usually if I'm cross training because I'm injured, I'm usually trying to replicate some kind of workout every other day, and so that's usually in the pool. Fortunately for me, I am very good at cross training, and so I found that in the pool, if I'm aqua jogging, I can really replicate a workout as best as I could and get my heart rate up. Or the elliptical, but I think, the pool is just completely non-weight bearing, so that's always safe for me. And when it's nice out, like in the summertime here in Portland, I do enjoy riding my bike, so I will do a lot of cross training on my bike as well. I'm not a huge fan of the elliptical, but I will use it if I'm just burnt out of the other two things.
So any other recovery tools that are using? I think I saw something like the Normatec boots. I use those myself. Those are nice and easy to use because you can just sit and watch Netflix and use your Normatec boots.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, not really. I just get one massage a week, and I like to do acupuncture, so I'll do that at least once a week. But other than that, when I'm traveling for a long time, for sure the Normatec boots come in handy. I'm a huge advocate for contrast bathing. We're fortunate to have a hot and cold tub accessible to us on Nike campus, so I use that a lot. But yeah, I try to stay away from like using massage guns or stuff like that, because I just feel like sometimes poking and prodding things doesn't always make it better. So try to keep like the treatment very, very minimal, and just not over-treat things.
Totally good. I prefer old-fashioned, even sometimes just using those sticks that you rub your legs with, like an easy massage.
Yeah, and I've definitely learned that less is more, especially when it comes to treating things.
Yes. So another thing I've noticed, I watched your 2019 national championship, and then in 2022 your national in college, and then your 2022 national championship in the 1500. And you seem to run so strong and comfortable, like in your position, and then the kick that you have, in my opinion, is unique because it's so smooth. A lot of people have a kick where they might just, I think Nikki Hiltz, like today, in the world of today, her kick is something that just she takes off, and I commend that. Yours, though, is like just so smooth. Like you'll come around off that turn with 150 left, and it's so smooth and in control, but it's such a great kick. So is that something you've always had naturally, or is that something you've worked?
Yeah, I would say so. I think that became pretty evident like early on in high school that I did have pretty good finishing speed. But it's always been, like you said, it's been a little bit deceptive because it doesn't really look like I'm running faster, but I am. And yeah, I think, in 2022, I got to a point where running 4:05 pace, I was strong enough to be able to really kick off of that pace because I was in really good shape then. And I think this level now is gotten so much stronger, and there's just so many good women now that can run, low fours and beyond, sub four. Nikki is probably in 3:54 shape. So if we're running 3:57 pace, they're going to be able to kick really hard off of that. So yeah, I think it's two things. So you got to have the speed to be able to do that, but then at the same time you have to, in the 1500 especially, you have the strength to be able to get to the end of the race to use that finishing speed.
So that leads me to, the Olympic trials where you ran. To me, it's probably the best race I've ever watched in my life of watching track and field. You ran the seventh fastest time in American history for a female with a time of 3:56.75. And, here we are sitting today. And I mean, any year, any day, that would be first place, most likely, or top. Now that it's past a couple weeks, I'm sure it was emotional for you, but where's your mindset at now?
Yeah, that was a strange day. Crossing the finish line, initially I was very upset. In 2019, I came in fourth place. And as a college kid, I thought I could make the team, but I also ran a huge PR, and there was really no expectation for me to make the team. Regardless, fourth, yeah, it's a hard place to be. And then last year, I was battling an injury and had, to take basically a month off 2 months before the trials. So I had a month to get ready. And I came in fourth place then. Fortunately, Mo decided to scratch the 15 and just do the 800. So I got to go to World. Crossing that finish line in fourth was really devastating. And then flash forward this year, the same thing kind of happened. So yeah, initially it was tough. It's not a spot anyone wants to be in. And I didn't really realize the time I had run when I obviously first crossed the finish line. I knew we ran fast, but I had no idea. And then I looked at the board and I saw 3:56, and it was just a very confusing emotion because I had run so fast, but I didn't make the team. And so I was just really just trying to rack my brain on how 3:56 doesn't make the team, honestly. Now taking time to reflect on it, I did everything I could have done leading up to the trials. I also had an injury that took me out all winter and had 10 weeks to get ready for the trials, which was better than last year, but still just not enough time when you're competing against, world-class athletes. These aren't just the best in America. These are some of the best women in the world. But then, at the same time, at the race, I really, truly put myself in a position to make the team, and I fought for every second of that race. And I have nothing, I didn't leave with any regrets. And I think, that's a much easier pill to swallow of like, well, what if I would have done this? What if I would have? And I don't have any of that. I don't even have any of that on the lead up to the race. I felt like I did, the most I could with the time I had. And even in the race, I did everything I could. So yeah, of course, I would have wanted to be top 3, but 3 people were better than me on that day. And I think I can be okay, more at peace with that, knowing that, yeah, I put myself in the best situation.
So with being healthy now and extremely fit, what races do you have coming up?
Yeah, so I'm actually not healthy right now. This has been quite a year for me. I dealing with some calf pain going into the trials, and unfortunately racing as much and as hard as I did just really kind of sent my calf over the edge. So I'm currently dealing with like a low grade strain that has just been really nagging, and so I've been cross training for the past week. I'm hoping to race sometime the end of August, but the priority right now is just to get healthy and maintaining as much fitness as I can, and we'll see what happens.
And it sounds like you've always had great support. You talked about earlier on in high school, then you went to Oklahoma State because you felt so comfortable there. Nike's been great. Who else in your life has been a key influencer in your running journey and your life journey?
The number one person that's been there through everything has been honestly my boyfriend. We met at Oklahoma State my freshman year. And yeah, he's honestly seen my entire running career, and he probably knows me as an athlete better than I actually know myself as an athlete, and has been just like, yeah, a huge support for me. But then, it goes beyond him. It's my coaches are very supporting, and I think, without the support, my story could be a lot different. And so I'm just very grateful for it. And I think, it's such a cliche saying, but it really does take a village, especially in this sport. I feel like you won't find someone at the top without 3 or 4 really key, important people around them.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I played basketball in high school, but running has been a part of me my entire life. To your point, it's not just one person, it's a village, but some of my most supportive people for me have been even my competitors, the people that I run against. My best friend Jordan, like we run in a lot of races and back in the day, and he'd beat me, I beat him, but we supported each other through the whole thing.
I'm a highly competitive person, so I'm never going to be BFFs with any of my competitors. But I will say the cool thing is that, especially in the distance running community, there's so much more uplifting other people. And I really feel like, seeing Nikki win, like that's someone I've gotten to know really, really well. And I'm super excited for them. Even Corey McGee, like she was the first person to hug me after the race and say something like, "You ran 3:56. Like there's nothing to be upset about." I feel like, I've made friends along the way with competitors for sure, and I feel like that's just like the very special thing about distance running. It is very much a community. We're truly happy for one another. It's cool to see because most of us, when we get on the track, we're all trying to beat each other. It gets every man for themselves out there, but I think after the race, it's nothing but love. So that's really special.
Very well said. So as an elite runner, especially with Nike, the national championships you've had, many people can look from the outside and they can look and see, all the victories, the glory, of winning national championship. What's not seen is, to the point you've made, is injuries that you've had, the struggles behind the scenes with those things. And, as humans, we experience these at different levels. How have you been able to manage those, go through those challenges mentally?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's something that I'm probably still working on. I think I've started to like flip this switch in my mind of, I didn't want injuries to define me, and I didn't want someone to look at me and say, "Oh, she's done this and this, but she's always injured." So, like we don't really know what she could do if she was healthy, or we don't know if she's going to show up to this race because she's always injured. I used to look at it like that. I'm trying to shift that mindset more. Being injured and coming back from injury is just a part of my story. It's not who I am, but it is a part of my journey. If I can really flip that switch and start to see it as just something that makes me me, but is not me, I think is much healthier way to look at it. And I was just really, really overcome with so much emotion after the Olympic trials. I had a lot of people reach out to me, especially people that have been in the same place that I've been, dealing with injury, and just them telling me how it's inspiring to them or how much it means to them and how much they look up to me. And I think that is a very good feeling. The way I look at it is like a negative thing. Like I'm injured, I'm coming back from injury. But, the way someone else looks at it is like a very positive thing and an uplifting thing and inspiring. I think that is, it's just really touching. And I think that I just need to use my platform to be able to relate to those people and to inspire those people and know that, this is not who I am, but it's a part of who I am. I really just try and hold on to like the belief and the faith that I'm becoming stronger because of it. And I'm really going to be ready to handle anything that comes my way beyond running through life because I've dealt with things like this.
I love how you say that because, we do all have a story. So at 26 years old, I think that's amazing to go through injuries, be successful, do what you've done, and be vulnerable enough to understand and know this is your story and go from there. I think that you're going to have a lot of good things ahead. So now just a couple lighter questions. The gear, running for Nike. What are some of your favorite running sneakers to train in, to race in?
Yeah, I feel like Nike's always coming out with different things. The answer to that question could change based on the month. Currently, I'm loving the new Pegasus 41, which they've done huge ads for with like Jakob and their whole Win on Air campaign. I'm liking that shoe a lot right now. They came out with an amazing flat that is still in prototype stage, and they're still working on development of it, but hopefully that gets released to the public soon because it's great and I really like it. But yeah, those are like my two like go-tos right now.
You're right how they changed things, because this was in the 90s, but they had the Nike Anodyne. They were awesome, and they stopped them after a couple of years. They went to something else, but they're one of my favorite shoes of all time. I mean, it's like historic.
Yeah, it's cool because the Romero, which is still very much a shoe right now, it's like just always full circle moment, I think, with trends too. But the Romero 5, which is really, really old, because I think they're on maybe the 20th version of the Romero now. Don't quote me on that. I don't know. My Romero model. And so that shoe, they like brought it back, and it's like more of a lifestyle shoe, and it's super popular, and everyone's wearing them. But it's just crazy to wear these shoes and be like, these are what people were running in at some point, and like how far we've come now. What the Romero is today is just so different.
Do you know the Hirachis that they make, the Nike Hirachis?
Oh, that sounds familiar, but I don't know.
They still have those, but that's what we wore when I ran the 800 in high school. That's what I wore. I mean, they were like our racing shoes.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
And people now wear them like walking around downtown.
It's like now it's lifestyle. Like this is cool now. Hilarious.
So you mentioned things that you've learned, personally and through running. What are some goals for you outside of running, for your life ahead?
That's a good question. Don't really have that great of an answer to it. I'm very tunnel vision, one track mind. So my life right now is running, but I do have other passions outside of running. I just really like to be outdoors, and whether that's like hiking or biking or spending time on the water, like surfing, I do really love that. And so I feel like that's kind of my happy place when I'm not running. I do have a degree in economics. I don't really know if I'll do anything with that beyond. I will say the one thing I am getting more interested in, just because I've been in this now for 6 going on 7 years. There's just a lack of representation of women in sports marketing departments or divisions, I guess, whatever you want to call it, within almost all companies, and especially Nike too. Yeah, I think that would be something that I would be truly interested in, because when you talk about the agent world, it's very much these people have been in these positions for years and years and years, and this is how it goes. There hasn't been a whole lot of progression and not a whole lot of change from 5, 10, 15 years ago. I will say it is cool. I feel like there are starting to be different little things, like Gabby Thomas is putting on her own women's only track meet at the end of this year, and Michael Johnson starting this whole Grand Slam track club. So there are instances of people trying to change the sport from the outside, but I also just feel like there just needs to be more women in power and women representation, especially in these roles of sports marketing. I am fortunate enough, like my sports marketing team that I deal directly with at Nike is phenomenal, and they're great, but I just don't know if that's everyone's experience. And yeah, I just think that us women bring a different perspective and a different amount of empathy to the table that men don't. And we each have our pros and cons and our strengths and weaknesses. And I just think there just needs to be a little bit more representation of women in the business side of things.
That's extremely well said. I won't get into my work, but we see that in the realm of the world of what I do as well.
Yeah.
So lastly, as a national champion, both in college, then your professional world with Nike in 2022 and 2019, what advice would you have to give? Because your story, in my opinion, is amazing. But to have injuries, to bounce back, recover, and do what you've done is commendable. What advice do you have to give to young athletes out there looking at you and watching this one day and saying, one day I'd like to be like a Sinclair Johnson and run like her?
I think my biggest piece of advice, which I'm saying out loud, but I'm also telling myself too, because I need to remember this, is like, you are so much more than your times, your accolades, your accomplishments. And I feel like running, especially doing at this level, it's so easy to put your value and your worth alongside your performances. And I feel like really trying to separate the two. And my advice would be know who you are and know your value, know your worth, like outside of running, because no matter what you do on the track, like that will never change. And that's something that, will stay with you for years and years and years beyond running. So yeah, that would be like my biggest piece of advice.